Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Daly. I'm Politico's energy editor, and I'm delighted to welcome to the stage NextEra Energy's chairman, president, and CEO, John Ketchum. After a decade and a half of flat power consumption, U.S. electricity demand is set to surge in coming years. The rise of electric vehicles, growing demand for cooling as temperatures climb, the movement towards electrification, and most recently the advent of artificial intelligence and the data centers that are going to be needed to run that are all contributing to this surge. That's the challenge facing companies like NextEra Energy, which calls itself an all-forms energy company. It owns and operates America's largest natural gas fleet. It's the world's #1 generator of electricity from wind and sun, and a world leader in battery storage. It's also one of the largest nuclear operators in the US, and it's planning to invest $120 billion in American energy infrastructure over the next 4 years. It's quite a sum. So, thank you very much for being here today, John.
Matt, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's get right to it. Let's start out with the state of play in the power sector. President Donald Trump has declared a national energy emergency. That's not really based on where we are today, they say, but it's based on where we're going to be very soon. What do we see in the demand growth in the coming years? Are we really on the precipice of an energy emergency?
We are. I mean, I really see the potential for an energy shortage if we don't get our energy policy right. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. What we're projecting over the next 20 years is a 6-fold increase in the growth rate for power. And data centers get a lot of attention, but that's only really about 1/3 of the demand. We're going to see the other 2/3 around industry and economic expansion as we push our America First agenda here in the United States. Oil and gas refiners, chemical companies, semiconductor chip manufacturing, and just consumption in the home as we advance our AI agenda.
Well, that would seem to raise some real questions then about why the administration and Republicans in Congress are trying to sunset some incentives that were in the Inflation Reduction Act for wind and power, especially here. Those have been at the forefront of U.S. power generation growth in recent years, and renewables are expected to supply 25% of American electricity this year. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, Matt, you opened up talking about who NextEra is. We're unique. I mean, we're in every part of the energy value chain. Nobody's built more gas-fired generation in the last 20 years than NextEra. Again, the leader in wind, solar, battery storage, a leading operator of nuclear as well. But there's practical realities around how we meet all this demand from a time and a cost standpoint. There's only 3 ways to generate electricity. You can generate it from renewables, you can generate it from gas-fired generation, or you can generate it from nuclear. Let's save renewables for last. One of the issues that we're having with gas-fired generation is we remember what things look like and what the environment looked like a few years ago, where it was easy to get gas-fired generation up online and producing electricity. That's not the same today. Why is that? If we want to build a new gas-fired generation facility, and again, nobody's built more than 20 years, we know what we're talking about, we can't get it online till 2032. You might ask, well, why? First, you have to get in a long line to get a gas turbine. There's a lot of global demand for gas turbines today, not just in the United States for all the economic expansion opportunities that we have here, but Saudi Arabia just placed a very large order. You have a lot of demand out of Asia, a lot of demand out of Western Europe as well, tied to liquefied natural gas. And so the cost and the time to get your hands on a gas turbine has increased exponentially. It's just supply and demand. So the price of a gas turbine has gone up 3-fold just in the last 24 months. And then we have a big labor issue as well. I was talking to a CEO of a major EPC contractor about a month ago, and get this, it takes about 1,000 people to build a gas-fired generation facility. He has to hire 6,000 people just to get to 1,000 because the washout rate's so high. Why? Because he loses half of his workforce to data center build out, semiconductor chip manufacturing, industrial expansion, LNG terminals, chemical companies, you name it. The other third, because we haven't built gas-fired generation in the last decade, doesn't have the skill set and the muscle memory of how to do it. And so all those things add to cost. And the other piece is, we just heard about aluminum. But with aluminum and steel tariffs up, potentially 50% against China, that's creating a lot of uncertainty, too, on how to price if you're an EPC contractor or a gas-fired generation facility. Bottom line is, with all those things together, it's taking 6 to 7 years to get gas-fired generation online, which means we're looking really at around 2032 for that to contribute. Nuclear is much further off. So small modular reactors, we have a development team just focused on advanced nuclear reactors. But the issue that we're seeing around the OEMs is that we're really not going to get to even first of a kind generation around nuclear until about 2035, and then nth of a kind later next decade. And the cost is really, really high. I mean, you're looking at anywhere from 8 to 11,000 a kW to build a nuclear facility today.
Well, that sounds to me like we're going to miss the AI boat here. We're talking about a competitive advantage with China, and we're talking about building power generation now to meet this demand. If gas isn't going to be around till 2032, and you've got a project with GE Vernova that puts you ahead of a lot of your competitors there.
And Matt, that's the exact point, is that our job at NextEra is to get electrons on the grid. I don't care what flavor they are. I don't care if it's renewables, gas, or nuclear. I have to get electrons on the grid to accommodate all the demand that we see in this country and do it at a reasonable cost. Well, if I can't get gas on till 2032 and nuclear on much later, I'm only left with one option, given there's only 3 ways to produce electricity in this country, and that's renewables. So we need a bridge to get ourselves to 2032 when that gas shows up. And when that gas shows up, it's going to be 3 times more expensive than it's ever been. So we're going to have really high cost energy when it does show up. But putting that aside, we need a bridge to at least get there. And if we take renewables off the table, we are going to have a real power shortage problem in this country. I fear perhaps leading to blackouts during scarcity intervals. We'll create our own reliability problem just by not having enough electrons to be able to satisfy all the demand that we see, and we'll lose the AI race. We'll lose it.
And even if we keep the lights on, are we going to price ourselves out of the AI data race? I mean, if I'm a data center,
and that's another concern, right? Because renewables, not only does it take 12 months to build wind or 18 months to build solar, we can get it online quickly because those supply chains are in existence today and can respond quickly. We can get those electrons online by 2032 at a low cost until the gas shows up in 2032, albeit at a higher cost, and then nuclear much later. Renewables play an essential role. We're projecting 450 gigawatts of demand between now and 2030. Only 75 gigawatts of that 450 pedal to the metal can be satisfied by gas. That leaves 375 gigawatts that have to be satisfied by something. If it's not renewables, what is it going to be? We're going to be short power in this country. We cannot afford to do that. If we do that, we will lose the AI race, and we will bring this economic expansion in the United States to a screeching halt.
That's a big risk, but I see a couple other ones that we haven't even touched on yet that we could spend a lot of time talking about. So you're going deep into gas, and you're already there, of course. We're looking at forecasts, as my colleague Ben Lefebvre just said, forecasts that the rising LNG exports are starting to take the top off this our shale revolution here in a way. The shale fields have done well for 20 years, and they've really powered this gas renaissance. But those prices and that output may be peaking here now.
Yeah.
Are we at risk of seeing some really some changes in the gas price to the upside?
I think so, and here's why. We're an upstream oil and gas as well. We drill for oil, we drill for gas. We know this market. We have a large trading and marketing operation as well, and so we have a lot of insight into where we think prices are heading. And not only is there a lot of LNG demand globally that's going to put upward pressure on natural gas prices, but one thing that a lot of folks don't talk about, when oil starts to come down in price, and I think the goal is to get it to around $50, $60, a barrel, that means there's a lot less associated gas being produced because there's a lot less oil being drilled.
That's the gas that comes out of these oil wells.
That's the gas that comes out of these oils. There's a lot of associated natural gas that comes out of oil drilling. Well, if less associated gas is coming out of oil drilling at the same time that we are exporting more LNG, what's going to happen to natural gas prices? They're going to go up at the same time that we're doubling down on a technology that's 3 times more expensive to build. Now the operating costs are going to go up as well when it finally shows up in 2032.
So there's some real hurdles coming up for gas. We'll see how the industry and how your company responds to those. But the one thing that you're talking about as our good go-to right now, fill in that space, is the renewables. And while we've got the ITC and PTC sunset very quickly under the House version of the reconciliation bill, and the Senate may make some changes to that. Are you nervous that they're going to pass that House measure?
Yeah, I mean, I look at 3 things there, right, coming out of that bill. One was the placed in service requirement in the House bill, right? In order to be eligible for credits, you have to place in service a renewable facility by the end of 2028. We've always operated under a start of construction standard where we'd like to change that placed in service language to start of construction, which would get us the credits a little bit longer, which would provide that perfect bridge to when natural gas shows up in 2032. The other piece is transferability. That was in the House bill. It's critically important we have the ability to transfer tax credits. Rate-regulated utilities, for example, they have no other way to monetize the tax credits, which have a huge impact on lowering utility bills without the ability to transfer. And the last piece are the foreign entity of concern provisions that are in the House bill. The way they were drafted, they're unworkable. Why do I say they're unworkable? Well, they have 2 provisions in them. One is what we call material participation provisions, where I'll just give you an example. An average wind turbine has 10,000 component parts. A solar project has 5,000 component parts. An SMR, oh my gosh, I mean, probably easily upwards of over 10,000 components. Let's take an SMR, for example. I won't even use renewables as an example. Let's use nuclear as an example. Say that we go and buy a fastener, just a fastener, that's used in an SMR from a company in Dearborn, Michigan. We think we're buying American, right, for the SMR. We come to find out that one of the screws and the bolts that was used by one of the suppliers 5 layers down from the Dearborn, Michigan company, where we think we're buying American, was actually sourcing the bolt and the screw from China. Guess what happens?
You're disqualified.
You're disqualified. All your tax credits for that small modular reactor go away.
So you think we've overstepped here?
It's impossible to comply with. How in the world are you going to trace 5 layers down to a subcontractor who's buying a bolt and a screw? And I'm not kidding. There's no materiality provisions. A bolt and a screw from China. And then there's payment provisions in there where if you're going to finance the build out and you come to find out that say you place public debt to finance the small modular reactor, and say that public debt is owned 5% by a Chinese company. You have no idea, right? You're placing public debt. You don't know who's going to buy it. You have no control over it. Let's say a Chinese company buys 5% of that debt, disqualified. You lose all your credits on that small modular reactor. These provisions don't work, and so they need to be fixed.
Do you have any confidence that they might get fixed?
I do. Look, our NextEra is fully behind moving away from China. I mean, if you look at our supply chain today, we buy all our batteries here in the U.S. We source our gas turbines in the U.S. from GE out of South Carolina. 90% of our wind turbines are made in Florida. We have really pivoted to a domestic supply chain. But let's make this at a component level where we're looking at the major pieces of equipment. and make it and design it in a way that can actually be complied with instead of a gotcha to where you lose all your credits. Because, I mean, there's no American company in any industry that could comply with these provisions.
Well, that sounds like a big hurdle, and one of the big areas that you didn't really even touch on there is the battery technology, which is a field that you're getting into. When are we going to see battery technology really make a big difference and start to show its strength on the grid?
Yeah, great question, Matt. I mean, we're the world's leader in battery technology. It already is. I mean, so if you think about capacity resources, right? There's energy, and then there's capacity, which is, having the energy during the hours of the day that you need it. Battery technology's come a long way, and so when you really look at when customers need power for reliability purposes, it's typically during those evening hours from 5 to 9 at night. Well, we have 4-hour batteries that can accommodate that can make renewables 85% firm. And batteries are much cheaper than gas-fired peakers, and actually are displacing gas-fired peakers in most parts of the country because of those phenomenons we talked about earlier.
But there's a lot of Chinese ties to this industry as well, the technology, the parts.
And what's great is we've been able to now source all of our batteries from a company right here in the United States, being able to decouple almost entirely from buying from Asian suppliers.
Is that going to meet your demand and your peers' demand, or is that going to be a constraining factor in terms of the demand?
Well, it's something NextEra's been able to do. I think you'll see the rest of the industry continue to pivot to more domestic purchasing. And what's happening, what's great about this is that as we're moving the supply chain here to the U.S., we have the 45X manufacturing credit. We're creating a ton of jobs right here in the United States. We're having a huge impact on rural economies, on state economies, through property taxes, through sales tax revenue. I mean, it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry today. And these domestic first provisions of transferring the manufacturing capability of the U.S. is working, and NextEra is fully behind that.
Well, I'm getting the high sign here that we need to wrap it up. I got one other thing I've noticed here in this conversation. I'm guessing the audience has probably noticed it too. There's one word we haven't discussed on stage here today: coal. Why is that?
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, with coal, we just had an executive order to keep coal online for a little bit longer. It just, unfortunately, is not going to make a dent. Coal, the train's left the station on coal. Most of the coal facilities have already been retired. Even if we slow down some of the retirement, you're looking at max 45 gigawatts. Let's go back to that 450 gigawatt number I gave you earlier to accommodate all the demand by 2030. 45 gigawatts just doesn't make a dent in that, even if you delay some of those slowdowns. And the issue with coal is, look, Folks in our industry, when you run a rate-regulated utility, your goal and your obligation is to provide the lowest cost power to your customer. And so you make decisions around your generation profile that result in that. And unfortunately, coal is the most expensive, some of the most expensive generation that you can provide your customer. So you've seen a lot of utilities move away from it. And the last point that I'll make along those lines is, let's not forget that when we're designing a solution for a customer, we're not matching a generation resource against a data center. The data center is being built in the context of a generation system that already exists. And so we're making the most economic decision on what the incremental marginal source of generation should be to accommodate that data center demand, taking into account what the current system can already produce. Mm-hmm. For example, in Florida, we have the largest gas fleet in the United States, 24 gigawatts of natural gas-fired generation in Florida. Building another gas plant is not the best solution for my customer. The best solution for my customer is to build more solar or more battery storage because it's a third of the cost. And I can lean on that gas-fired generation during the hours of the day when the sun's not shining and the 4-hour battery doesn't work, which is at night, because I have all this excess gas-fired generation that's going unutilized. So you have to make these decisions within the context of an existing system. which I think gets lost in the shuffle sometimes.
It's a complicated equation, that's for sure.
It is.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you very much for your insights and your willingness to come up here to Washington and share them with us.
Matt, thank you for the time. Appreciate it.